What's going on, everybody? It's Scott here, and today we are going to talk about a couple of upcoming cameras. One that has been announced, one that should be officially announced really soon. Those are the XA7 and the XPro3, both from Fujifilm. Now, you guys know that I'm a big lover of the XA line. I've got the XA1, I've got an XA10, I've reviewed the XA3 and XA5 in the past. I love that line of camera. I think they're a great entry point for anybody looking to get into more serious photography, kind of getting away from phone photography and getting to something with a big sensor, interchangeable lenses, all of that fun stuff. They're not intimidating to use, they're great. And even as a second camera, for people that have Fuji gear, I think that they're a great option. And for travel, they're nice and small. Anyways, we'll talk about that one later because we already know everything we need to know about it. But the first camera I want to talk about is the rumored because, I mean, it's happening, but the XPro3, so the replacement of the XPro2. The XPro2 came out, I believe, in 2016, so it's a very long time since we've had an update to the X-Pro line. The XPro2 was actually the first camera that Fujifilm ever lent me to review, and I took it on like a 10-day road trip through the Rocky Mountains in Alberta. That was what sort of really kicked me off on this whole camera reviewing thing. That was before I had a YouTube channel. It's a long time ago, and I've never owned that camera. I do own an X-Pro1. This is my X-Pro1. I love this camera. I actually haven't had it that long. I bought it used a couple of months ago, and it's great. I love the ergonomics of this camera. I love the hybrid viewfinder. I love this. Obviously has the original X-Trans sensor, but let's talk about the X-Pro line and what the rumors are, whether I think that they're good or not, and just why it's taken so long for them to update this camera. Okay, so it's pretty run-of-the-mill stuff when it comes to the specs of this camera. As far as I know, it's going to have the same sensor processor combo as the X-T3, X-T30, which is great because those are both excellent cameras. It's going to keep the hybrid viewfinder. It's going to keep essentially the same ergonomics, but it's going to get rid of the D-pad or D-pad sounds like some sort of hygiene product. So it's going to get rid of the four-way controller on the back of the camera and replace it with a joystick, very similar to the XE3 and the XT30, which is fine. Like I'm shooting on an XT30 right now, and I don't miss that four-way controller at all. The joystick and the touchscreen are plenty good enough to make up for not having that. I believe it's also going to have a touchscreen, which will be, I think, a first for the X-Pro line. And the screen, I'm fairly sure, is going to be articulated. Now, Fuji Rumors, which is a great site if you're into rumors about Fujifilm cameras, it's a very clever name for a website also. They have shown some sketches of what they believe that rear screen is going to look like. And I'll pop them up on the screen here. You guys can have a look, but essentially it's going to be a screen that flips down, but the screen is actually going to be hidden when it's folded up. So you're going to have not just a permanent screen on the back of the camera. It's just going to have a small screen in the middle that shows you the stuff you would see around the outside of the screen, or the stuff you would see on a top display on a DSLR, or like the Fuji medium format cameras, or the XH1, like a very similar setup to that. So it'll show you your ISO, your aperture, your film simulation, your shutter speed, like all that sort of informational stuff. Now, you can set up the displays on these to just show that information now, but I mean, it's a big screen. You don't really need all that real estate for it. My X-T100, that's how I shoot with that camera. I don't use the image display on the back of the camera. I just have information. So it's an interesting choice. I think that, I think it'll work. I think it'll be fine. I'm not sure why They're not adopting the more articulated screens from the XT100 on any other cameras. I loved that screen. That was my favorite part of that camera. And I'm kind of bummed it hasn't made its way to other Fujifilm cameras. But the XA7, which we'll talk about in a minute, has a fully articulating screen, which is, I guess, better. I liked the XT100 better for a couple of reasons. We'll talk about that later. So the XPro3, I think it's going to essentially performance-wise be identical to the XT3 and XT30. I don't know if there's going to be a grip for it. That would be really interesting if they made a battery grip for the XPro3, but yeah, I doubt it. So why did it take them so long to update the X-Pro line? I've heard that maybe the XPro2 didn't sell quite as well because it came out so close to a bunch of other cameras that were better spec'd for less money. And when it came out, it didn't have 4K video, and they said they couldn't put 4K video in it, and then they figured out a way to put 4K video in it after the XT2 came out, and it had 4K video. So I think they just want to get this one right, and that's why it's taken them so long. I don't think it's going to take a big specs leap like we're expecting to see with the XT4, but I think that it will be competitive with the current lineup, and I think that's probably good enough for the X-Pro line. I don't know if there's a lot of people shooting video with this style of camera. I think if you're shooting any video, you're definitely using the XT cameras, either the T3 or the T30, or even the XH1 with its in-body stabilization. I don't believe the XPro3 will have IBIS. I don't see it happening. I think maybe the XT4 will, but that's another video for another day. So I'm pretty excited about the XPro3. Like I said, it was the camera that sort of brought me in to be able to review Fujifilm cameras. So to have a new version of it coming out, I'm looking forward to it. So leave a comment below. Are you excited about it? It's a gorgeous camera. Like even this X-Pro1 is gorgeous, especially with this vintage Alpa 55mm f1.4 lens on here, which is one of my favorite vintage lenses, which hopefully I'll be doing a review on soon. Maybe I'll do it shot on this X-Pro1. That would be pretty cool. Okay, so the second camera is the XA7, and like I said at the beginning of the video, I love the XA line. I don't have you know what? I didn't get one of my XA cameras out, but you guys know what they look like. There's no viewfinder. It's just a screen. So they're kind of the same form factor as the XE series of cameras, just without a viewfinder. There's just an articulating screen on the back. And before it was just a tilty up, tilty down kind of screen. The XA2 and later had a full vertical articulating screen so you could take selfies and do sort of vlog style video. The XA5 was the first one with a mic input, but because the screen flipped up, you had to use like a flash gun bracket to have the microphone off to the side, and it was kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest. And they've made up for that this time by putting a fully articulating screen. I'm going to put some photos from Fujifilm's official release up during this video so you guys can see it, but I think they've done a nice job design-wise, keeping the retro styling that people really love with Fujifilm cameras, but sort of moving it ahead, because the XA line has looked exactly the same for 6 or 7 years. Like it hasn't changed. There's been slight variations in the finishes and the way the leather wraps around the body, but this is just sort of a tightening up of the design. It's a little more sleek. It's almost a little more Art Deco retro as opposed to industrial retro, but it's a nice blend of the two, and I really like it. I think it looks great. There's some new colors as well, but the big thing is that fully articulating screen that flips out to the side and spins just like you would find on a Panasonic or a Canon or something that has had that style of articulating screen for years that Fujifilm has seemed to not want to adopt. The only thing I don't like about that screen is when you're shooting with the screen, it doesn't have a viewfinder. So if you want to shoot down low or you want to shoot up high, you actually have to flip it out to the side now and then tilt it, which I loved the XT100 screen for the fact that you could still use it like a regular tilty flippy screen, but it also flipped out to face forward and it was to the side. It was the perfect screen in my opinion, but they've decided to go this route. That's fine. It's a bigger screen too. The touch interface is all new. It looks great. So one of the big drawbacks to the XA5 was they introduced 4K video. It wasn't video, it was 15 frames a second. It looked awful. 15 frames per second is not video. It's a 8 megapixel burst mode, which that's not video. It was not 4K. So the new XA7 has proper 4K video where you can shoot in 24 and 30 FPS. The screen on the back is 3.5 inches, which is very big for a camera, and it's done away with a lot of the buttons on the back of the camera in favor of a mainly touch interface. I haven't used it yet. I will be getting one to review in October, hopefully. Hopefully I get it before we go to Disneyland, and then I can do a vlog down there with it. That would be really cool, but the dates may not work out. But regardless, I'm still getting my hands on one. I'm looking forward to checking out the new touch interface. It's got a bunch more phase detect autofocus points. It's still a 24 megapixel APS-C Bayer sensor, so it's not an X-Trans sensor, it's a Bayer sensor. There's a whole bunch of things built into this camera for people that want to do creative photography that maybe don't want to learn about shutter speed and stuff like that and depth of field. You can do a bunch of things with this camera that you're used to doing with a smartphone, where the camera just sort of does it for you. And I guess that's a good thing, but I would like to see people learn. But if they don't want to learn and they just want to take nice pictures, who am I to judge? So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the XA7. That should be in the next month or so, maybe a little longer. Fujifilm's just working on getting their review units in stock, and we will go from there. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think Fujifilm's moving in the right direction with these cameras, or are they just kind of stalling? Because if you look at what Canon's come out with recently, the megapixel counts are going way up. Same with Sony and their full frame stuff. Panasonic's gone to full frame. I'm not a full frame believer. I think that the differences between full frame and APS-C, it's a lot of hype, if I'm being honest. Even Micro Four Thirds is still really, really good, but there is some definite pixel pushing going on with these other companies, and Fujifilm doesn't seem to be really concerned with it. That's fine with me. Generally, all of the photos I share end up on the internet anyways, where you guys are looking at them in either HD or 4K, unless you have some crazy, crazy monitor or are blowing them way up on a huge screen or whatever. But that higher resolution doesn't do me a lot of good, but that's just my opinion. It's probably wrong. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think. When I get my hands on one, if not both of these cameras, I'll be doing a full review here on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see when those drop. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.